crafters, and welcome back. My name is Deepa from DeeZinesByD, and today I have a Scrappy Tales post for you. So this post is all about using the Harvest Blessings Deluxe card kit, which Scrappy Tales released in the last release. Now, this card kit is packed full of a bunch of stuff, and I'm actually going to use a portion of it just to make 3 cards today. And I want to show you how I made not only the front, but added just a little extra something just to add some design on the inside of the card. So as I mentioned, I have 3 cards for you today, and let's go ahead and have a look at that card kit. So you can see it comes with these gorgeous pearls. They actually come with 2 finishes. One is shiny iridescent and the other one has a matte finish. You also get the 6x6 inch pattern paper pad, and I say paper loosely. These are nice thick cardstocks, and there are 12 designs, 24 pages, and they are patterned front and back. You get this beautiful wheat stalk, which is really large. It's about 6 inches, just like the pattern paper. You get the layering stencils for the sunflower and the coordinating die, and then you also get the wild sunflower stamp set, which has a bunch of sentiments for autumn and Thanksgiving and sunflowers. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the stamp set, and I'm just going to stamp out the sunflower. So there's 4 sunflower images in the set, and I'm going to stamp out all 4 of them using some Spectrum Noir Flagstone ink. So I'm using this ink because it is Copic coloring safe, but you know, in the end I didn't actually use Copics. I'm actually going to be using some colored pencils, my Prisma color pencils. So I use my Misty so I could make sure to get a nice crisp impression on these sunflowers. And once I had them all stamped out, I grabbed my Prisma colored pencils, and I was originally going to go with Copic markers, but I figured I use them all the time. I don't use my colored pencils as much, so let's grab those and color these sunflowers in. So I'm using the same technique as I would with Copics. I'm grabbing 3 shades of the color that I want to use. So in this case, I've used 3 shades of yellow, and I'm making the bottoms of the petals, so the areas that are closer to the center of the sunflower, darker, and then bits on the edges. So the thing that I like about Sabrina's stamps, or the Scrappy Tale stamps, is that the way that she designs them is she has a lot of extra lines in the images. And if you're someone who is not familiar with coloring, or you're just getting into it, or maybe you're not so skilled, kind of like myself, those extra lines really help you, because where you see the extra lines is normally where it's a bit darker. So that's where you know to go with your darker pencils. Where there's nothing is where your highlights are going to be. You see, you can tell that I'm really a fan of stamps like this that have those extra lines and the bit of shading so that I know exactly how to color these in. So I've gone ahead and used the same technique with my greens, and I've colored in both panels here. And so I've got all of these colored in. My next step is to cut them out. So there are coordinating dies that you can buy separately to go with these. I don't have them, so I'm just going to fussy cut these out with my scissors. So that concludes my prep for the sunflowers. I'm going to also go ahead and prep this wheat stalk. So I'm cutting it out of some gold metallic cardstock here, and this gold metallic cardstock is very yellow, and I did that on purpose because I want it to contrast the browns that I'm going to have in the wheat stalk. I've also cut this out from some white cardstock, and I'm going to just use some inks to add color to it. So you not only get the wheat stalk, you got the little piece of cloth or whatever that would be tied around the bottom, and then you also get a separate wheat stalk. So now I'm just grabbing my blending brushes and my Altenew inks, and I'm using some Rocky Shore, some Sunray, some Mocha, and then a bit of espresso ink to basically just add lots of color and dimension to these die cuts. Now, as you can see, I'm using this technique, which I tend to use with all of my white cardstock when I cut out die cuts and add ink, is I cut it out, I add a bit of washi to the back and kind of insert the die cut like an inlay. And then I'll add my ink this way. It just makes it easier to get like little thin bits, especially at the end of the stalk, and to prevent them from, bending or pulling or not being covered in ink. In this case, I actually didn't even remove the stalk from the paper, the cardstock, once I cut it. And that was just to make this a bit easier so I don't have to inlay it. So I'll basically be separating it from the cardstock after I've added all the ink. Now, I guarantee you, if this is the first time that you're watching this, you're thinking, oh my God, that looks like such a mess. just stick with it. Just stay with me. Just continue to the end. Add all your colors, mix them all up. It's going to look like a hot mess, but once you pull it out of that negative piece, it's going to look stunning. So now the moment of truth, you can see I've pulled out that one weak stock. It looks pretty nice. Let's pull out the main stock and you can see all of that dimension, all of the depth. It looks pretty good there. So since I did cut this out of the gold cardstock, I actually took that little piece that ties around the stock and attached that with the gold cardstock. And then I'm going to pull out the actual main stock and I'm going to attach it behind that inked up piece to just create a bit of shine and a shadow and just give the entire stock a bit more depth and thickness, fullness, I guess. Now I've also gone ahead and I've cut out 4 card base. Now card bases, these are A2 size card bases. I cut one lengthwise and created 2 top folding cards, and then I've cut the other one widthwise to create 2 side folding cards. So this is just plain white cardstock, and after I've got these together, I've pretty much completed my prep work for putting together these 3 cards. So let's go ahead and get started with the first card, which is this one here. So you can see for this one, we're going to be using that wheat stock that we just created. So what I did was I went through the pattern paper and I picked a panel that I thought would work well with the wheat stock, which is this basically sort of plaid or gingham looking brown cardstock, and I'm just going to cut a small panel out of it. I think the width ended up being about between 3 inches and 3 3/4 inches, just so that it would fit the top part of my card there, and I wanted the extra width there so that I could add a gold border around it. So once I'd cut that out, I like to keep all of my scraps in this little plastic sleeve, and I just keep it in the back of my pattern paper pack here so that I have it for future use. And now I'm going to go ahead and attach that panel to the same gold metallic cardstock that I used for the wheat stock. And I like to attach it and then kind of cut it down to size to get the right border. You could also cut the panel ahead of time and then attach it to the back, measuring it. But I am not really one for measuring things, so this works better for me. So now I'll grab my card base here, and I've also cut a beige cardstock panel here just to kind of break up all of that white. It's about 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches so that I get a little bit of a white border around it. And then I'm adding that pattern paper panel to the top half of the card. So next I want to add my sentiment before I add my die cut piece, because that's just going to add some bulk and I won't be able to stamp this out nicely in my MISTI. So I'll line this all up, and I've picked the From Our Family or Our Home to Yours Happy Thanksgiving sentiment, and I'm just going to stamp that out in some VersaFine Clair pine cone ink, so keeping with the brown tone of the card. Next, I'll just add some foam squares to this die cut piece, this die cut wheat stock, and the foam's just going to give it a bit of dimension and have it prop up as the main focal point on this card here. So I will attach that, and before I add my embellishments on the front, I want to design a bit of the inside. So remember, I have those extra single stocks. What I'll do is I'll add some glue to them and add them to the bottom left of the inside of the card. And I thought this still looked a little incomplete, so I'm grabbing those extra scraps that I'd put in that plastic sleeve, and I'm going to add them to the bottom of the card here. I'll add 1 strip and then a strip of brown glitter cardstock. Sorry, I have an image still here because I lost a bit of footage, but I will show you what it looks like once I add the embellishments. So now I've got those beautiful yellow pearl embellishments that come with this card kit, and I'm just going to add them on. You can see that there's a great variety in the size here. I've got some huge ones and some really small ones. And I will mention that the small ones tend to stay in the bottom of that little plastic baggie. So if you're looking for those, they're all pretty much in there. And I'm going to add just some of the iridescent or the shiny ones to the background here. So now this card is pretty much complete. All you have to do is add a sentiment inside and you're good to go. So now let's move on to card number 2. And this one is going to focus more on the sunflowers. So now I'm going to use the pattern paper and pick a pattern that works well with the sunflower. So I picked this darker green polka dot piece, and I'm actually using this circle die set to cut out a circle, which is going to end up being like the focal point that's going to have my sentiment on it. So I cut that out of some green cardstock, and I'm going to attach the pattern paper to my card base here. And again, I'm allowing for a 1/8 of an inch border, so that is 4 inches by 5 1/4. Now, I decided that that green circle wasn't enough, so I actually cut out a smaller circle from some white cardstock, and I'm going to stamp out the sentiment that I've chosen with some black VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And I got just a little bit of smudging, so I just used my Tombow Mono Eraser to erase the smudge. And now I'm just going to attach it to that green circle with some foam circles. Now, these foam circles are actually off of Amazon. They're just a little bit thinner than the normal foam square, so I can actually add multiple layers and not have too much dimension on my card and not too much bulk to put this through the mail if I wanted to. So I've added a black glitter cardstock strip to the center of the card, and now I'm going to add the sunflowers. So the two left and rightmost sunflowers are going to be attached flat to this card, and then the sunflower in the center, I'm going to add some more foam to it to add some dimension. And now, since those foam circles are a little bit thinner, I can add more to the back of this circle and have it sit up on top of those sunflowers and be the main focal point of this card. So I'll just kind of attach it so that it's in the center and a little bit down near the bottom so that I'm not covering up too much of those sunflowers. Now, again, before I embellish this, I'm going to just add a little something on the inside. So for all of these cards, I'm just adding some of the scrap cardstock, some of the scrap pattern paper that I have used on the front. This means that I'm using up my scraps, so I'm not wasting too much. And on top of it, I'm having a design that coordinates with the front of the card. Now, when I add these strips, I like to add just a bit of specialty paper. So in this case, I have this pad of glitter cardstock, and it has a bunch of neutral colors, which work perfectly with any type of paper. So I'm grabbing a gold glitter panel, and I'm cutting just some small strips from it, and I'm going to add that just on the edge between the pattern paper and the white. And I find that this always gives any card just a bit of a professional finish, or it just ties everything together nicely. So on the first card, I only added a strip on the bottom because I also had those die cuts, but in this card, I don't have any extra die cuts to put in here, so I'm adding those panels on the top and the very bottom of the card. So once I've got everything attached there, I'm cutting off any overhanging pieces. And when I fold this card, I realized that my pattern paper on the inside wasn't quite butted up to the edge. So I'm just using my guillotine cutter and a big smacking motion, which seems to work well for smaller slivers to get a nice clean cut. As I mentioned, those pattern papers are kind of thick. They're really good quality, so they have a bit of bulk to it. So to cut off a small sliver takes a little bit more effort. So now again, I'm grabbing those yellow pearl embellishments to add to the front of the card. And again, I'm adding those iridescent shiny ones to this card. So that wraps up card number 2, and let's get into card number 3, our final card today. So for this card, I've gone ahead and I've grabbed a piece of pattern paper that looks like I could use both sides of it. So I'm just adding a whole bunch of adhesive to the front of my card base, and I'm attaching this in a diagonal fashion. Once I've attached it, I'll go ahead and cut off all of the overhanging edges using my guillotine cutter, which I find works best for this method. And once I've got all of those pieces cut off, again, I'm not going to waste them. I'm going to use the opposite side to fill up the top half of the card. And once I've placed that on there exactly where I want it, again, I can go ahead and cut off any of those overhanging bits. Now, keep those overhanging bits because you can use some on the inside of the card. Now, just like I did on the insides of the last 2 cards, I'm using a gold glitter strip on the front just between the join of those 2 pattern papers. And again, it just gives it more of a finished look. So now I have this final die cut sunflower that I'm going to use on this card for interest and to be like our main sunflower image. And I've picked another sentiment and I'm just stamping it out with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink on a strip of white cardstock. So I've actually cut that strip a little smaller to fit our sentiment, and I'm just going to attach it right above that glitter strip that we added between the 2 pattern papers. So what this design does is it breaks up the 2 papers, it highlights the sentiment, and it really just stands out nicely on the card. Now I'll go ahead and attach that sunflower die cut with some more foam tape, And then I'll add some more of these beautiful yellow pearl embellishments. Now this time I'm adding the matte gold or the matte yellow finish for these pearls. And you can see they give a different look and they look really nice and classy. Now for the inside of this card, I simply just added a little piece on the bottom corner with a strip of glitter cardstock again. So that wraps up these 3 cards for today. Now, I hope you guys were inspired to create something similar yourself. And you could see that my main process, technique, or method is to prep what I'm going to use and then go ahead and pick all of the papers that I want to use and put everything together with the sentiments in the end. It really just speeds up your creation process and helps you create something that looks really nice in the end. Once again, if you like my video, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for future videos, and I've got everything that I've used here linked in the blog link in the description below. Don't forget to check that out. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.